How does a man stay calm when his own family laughs as he's told he isn't welcome anymore? Why did Christmas still happen after that, but without the money everyone depended on? This is how I stopped paying quietly and let the consequences speak instead. The dining room at Alara's house had that carefully curated warmth that only comes when someone else is paying for it. I'd covered the mortgage down payment, the furniture, even the chandelier that cast its expensive glow over our pre-Christmas dinner. Sitting at the head of the table, a position I'd earned through decades of quiet financial support, I watched my family enjoy the meal I'd funded, but hadn't been asked to help plan. Grandpa, I made special fortune cookies for everyone. 7-year-old Mara bounced into the room, her arms full of slightly misshapen cookies, wrapped in cellophane. Her enthusiasm was genuine, untainted by the adult dynamics swirling around the table. She'd spent the afternoon in the kitchen with her mother, my daughter Alara, carefully folding strips of paper into homemade treats. "How thoughtful, sweetheart," I said, accepting the cookie she pressed into my hands. Around the table, my son-in-law Rowan was already cracking his open, reading his fortune aloud with theatrical flair. "Good fortune follows the generous heart," he announced, then laughed. "Well, that's certainly appropriate for someone at this table." His eyes flicked toward me with that familiar, expectant look I'd grown to recognize over the years. Ilara opened hers next. "Family is the greatest treasure." She smiled, but it was the practiced smile she used when she needed something. The same one that preceded every request for emergency funds, every casual mention of an unexpected expense. I cracked open my cookie with the same anticipation I'd felt as a child. That small thrill of discovering what wisdom or encouragement might be waiting inside. The paper unfolded in my fingers, and I read the words twice before their meaning fully registered. "You're not welcome at Christmas." The silence that followed was profound. I looked up to find every eye at the table fixed on me, waiting for my reaction. Mara's face was confused innocence. She clearly hadn't known what any of the fortunes said. Alara's expression was carefully neutral, but her hands fidgeted with her napkin. Rowan looked like a man watching a firecracker with a lit fuse, anticipating the explosion. Then, the laughter started. Rowan burst first, a loud guffaw that seemed to give everyone else permission to join in. Even Alara managed a nervous chuckle, though she still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Oh my God, that's terrible," Rowan wheezed between laughs. "What are the odds? Poor Damon gets the one cruel fortune in the batch." "It's just random," Alara said quickly, but her voice carried an odd tension. Mara just wrote down phrases she'd heard. She didn't mean anything by it. I folded the slip of paper carefully, creasing the edges with deliberate precision. The laughter continued around me, but no one apologized. No one said it was inappropriate or hurtful. No one suggested we should ignore it or throw it away. They just laughed, as if my exclusion from the most important family gathering of the year was genuinely amusing. "Of course," I said quietly, slipping the folded paper into my wallet. "Just random." But as I sat there watching my family enjoy their dessert I'd paid for in a house I'd helped buy, at a table surrounded by chairs I'd purchased, I began to see the evening differently. When had I stopped being a person they wanted to spend time with and become simply the man who made their lifestyle possible? I stayed for another hour, participating in conversations about holiday plans I apparently wouldn't be attending, listening to Rowan discuss his business expansion using funds I'd provided, watching Alara scroll through her phone shopping for gifts she'd expect me to reimburse. Not once did anyone ask if I was hurt by the fortune. Not once did anyone assure me that, of course, I was welcome. They'd gotten their answer and it had made them laugh. Driving home that night, I found myself thinking about how we'd arrived at this point. It hadn't happened overnight. Like most erosions, it had been gradual, almost imperceptible, until suddenly I was standing in a completely different landscape than the one I'd started in. 3 years ago, when Rowan's business hit its first major rough patch, I'd stepped in quietly. A temporary loan, he'd called it, just to smooth things over until the next quarter. Ilara had called me in tears. They might lose the house, Mara's school, everything they'd built together. What kind of father would I be if I let that happen? The loan became a series of loans, The temporary assistance became permanent support. Rowan's business never quite recovered enough to pay me back, but there was always a reason, always another crisis, that required my attention and my checkbook. "Dad, you're so good to us," Alara would say during our monthly calls. But I noticed that those calls always seemed to coincide with unexpected expenses: car repairs, medical bills, school fees. Each crisis was presented with the same breathless urgency, the same assumption that I would, of course, take care of it. When had I stopped being invited to family gatherings and started being invoiced for them instead? My phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat, a thread I rarely participated in but was kept on, presumably so I could see what needed funding. Alara: "Christmas planning meeting tomorrow. So excited." Rowan: "Already booked the venue. Premium package this year." Ilara: "Mara's so excited about her new dress, Rowan. Speaking of which, we'll need to coordinate the payment stuff." The usual arrangement, Ilara: "Dad will handle it like always." Rowan: "Good old reliable Damon. What would we do without him?" I stared at the messages, waiting for someone to ask if I wanted to attend this Christmas celebration I was apparently financing. Waiting for someone to inquire about my preferences for the venue, the menu, the guest list. Waiting for any indication that I was considered more than a funding source. The messages continued. Alara: "Should we do the gift exchange again?" Rowan: "Definitely. Though let's set a higher limit this year." Alara: "$200 per person." Rowan: "Perfect. Damon won't mind, Alara. He never does." They were right, of course. I never did mind. I'd been so focused on being helpful, on being needed, that I'd forgotten to insist on being wanted. The next morning brought an email from Alara with the subject line, "Christmas invoice preliminary." Not Christmas plans or holiday celebration. An invoice, as if I were a vendor rather than her father. The breakdown was meticulous. Venue rental, $3,200. Catering, $1,800. Decorations, $450. Photography, $600. Gifts, family contribution, $1,400. Miscellaneous, $300. Total, $7,750. At the bottom in cheerful red font, "Thanks, Dad. You're the best." I sat in my home office, surrounded by the evidence of a successful life built through careful planning and hard work, and realized that somewhere along the way, I'd become a silent partner in my own family. I provided the funding but had no voice in the decisions. I covered the costs but received no gratitude, only expectation. The fortune cookie slip sat on my desk, unfolded now, its message stark in the morning light. "You're not welcome at Christmas." Perhaps it hadn't been random after all. Perhaps it had been the most honest communication I'd received from my family in years. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, engine off, staring at the fortune slip I'd taped to my dashboard. The fluorescent lights from the restaurant cast everything in harsh relief, making the words seem even more brutal than they had at dinner. "You're not welcome at Christmas." For the first time, I allowed myself to really consider what that meant. Not just the words themselves, but the context in which they'd been delivered, the laughter, the lack of apology. The immediate assumption that I would continue funding an event I was explicitly told I couldn't attend. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, scrolling through months of transactions. The pattern was undeniable. Monthly transfer to Ilara's account, $2,500. Rowan's business account supplement, $4,000. Mortgage assistance, $1,800. Car payments, both vehicles, $950. Insurance premiums, $340. Emergency fund deposits, $1,200. Over $10,000 every month flowing from my accounts to theirs. Money that had become so routine, so expected, that it was invisible to everyone except me. I kept scrolling, looking for evidence of gratitude, of inclusion, of any indication that this financial support came with emotional connection. Instead, I found charges at restaurants I'd never been invited to, vacation expenses I'd funded but not been asked to join, shopping sprees that preceded every major purchase request. They were living a life I was paying for but not participating in. Back home, I spread out 3 years of financial records across my dining room table: bank statements, transfer receipts, loan documentation, business investment records. The scope of my support was staggering, even to me. I'd been so focused on individual requests that I'd never calculated the total. $347,000 over 3 years, nearly a third of $1 million, flowing from my accounts to support a lifestyle that apparently had no room for me in it. I thought about Rowan's business, a boutique marketing firm that had never turned a real profit. Every month, I supplemented his revenue to cover payroll, rent, and basic operations. Without my money, his company would have folded within 6 months of opening. His employees thought he was a successful entrepreneur. His clients believed they were working with a thriving agency. Only I knew that the entire operation was an elaborate performance funded by my retirement savings. And what did I get in return? The privilege of being told I wasn't welcome at Christmas. I opened a new folder on my computer and labeled it December. Inside, I scanned the fortune cookie slip and saved it as the first document. Then, I began creating spreadsheets, organizing 3 years of financial support into categories: necessary, optional, and purely discretionary. The necessary category was surprisingly small, just the legal obligations I'd co-signed for. Everything else, the vast majority of my support, was optional, given freely, received without gratitude, and apparently taken for granted to the point where my presence was no longer required. I looked at my calendar. December 15th was 2 weeks away, the date of their next scheduled Christmas planning meeting, the one I'd seen mentioned in the group chat, but hadn't been invited to attend. That seemed like an appropriate deadline. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was sitting across from Caleb North, my accountant for the past 15 years. Caleb was a methodical man who approached financial planning like a chess game, always thinking several moves ahead. He'd watched my family support grow from occasional gifts to a substantial monthly obligation, but he'd never questioned it. That wasn't his role. Today, however, I needed his expertise for a different kind of planning. I want to review all my financial commitments to my family, I said, sliding the folder across his desk. Legal obligations versus voluntary support. Caleb opened the folder and whistled softly as he reviewed the spreadsheets. This is substantial, Damon. I knew you were helping them, but this level of support... He looked up at me over his reading glasses. What's prompted this review? I handed him a copy of the fortune cookie slip. He read it twice, his expression growing more serious. They laughed, I said simply. Everyone laughed. Caleb set the paper down carefully. I see. He turned back to the financial records, his demeanor now purely professional. Let's break this down. For the next 2 hours, we dissected every payment, every transfer, every financial connection between my accounts and theirs. The results were illuminating. Legal obligations: $1,200 monthly, co-signed car loan for Alara; voluntary support, $9,800 monthly, everything else. You could stop 89% of these payments immediately, Caleb said. No legal repercussions, no breach of contract. The business funding, the mortgage assistance, the emergency fund, all voluntary. What would happen to Rowan's business? Caleb pulled up the business account records I'd provided. Without your monthly supplements, it would be insolvent within 30 days. The payroll alone exceeds their revenue by 40%. And their lifestyle? The house payments would become unmanageable. They'd need to refinance, downsize, or... He paused delicately. Or ask me for help, I finished. Yes. I thought about this for a moment. What if they don't know the support has stopped until it's too late to ask? Caleb leaned back in his chair. You mean cease the payments without notice? I mean, stop treating them like children who need to be warned before facing consequences. That afternoon, I sat in attorney Lena Brooks' conference room, reviewing the legal implications of financial disengagement. Lena was thorough, sharp, and had helped me navigate the complexities of business law for years. She understood the importance of protecting oneself legally while maintaining ethical boundaries. You have no legal obligation to continue supporting your adult daughter or son-in-law, she confirmed after reviewing Caleb's analysis. The business investments were gifts, not loans, based on the documentation. You have no ownership stake, no formal partnership agreement. So I can simply stop? You can simply stop. She paused. Though I should ask, is this decision final? Because once you cease support at this level, rebuilding those financial relationships will be complicated. I thought about the laughter around the dinner table, the casual assumption that I would continue funding a celebration. I was explicitly told I couldn't attend. It's final, Lena nodded. Then let's make sure it's done correctly. We spent the next hour crafting a series of letters to various institutions, formally requesting the cessation of all automatic transfers, standing orders, and recurring payments to accounts associated with Alara and Rowan. The language was precise, legal, and irreversible. When do you want these to take effect? Lena asked. December 15th, I said. Let them plan their Christmas first. On December 10th, I sat at my computer and executed the plan. One by one, I canceled every automatic payment, every recurring transfer, every financial bridge I'd built between my resources and their lifestyle. The process was surprisingly simple. A few clicks, some electronic signatures, and 3 years of financial support evaporated into digital history. I kept the co-signed car payment. I wasn't trying to destroy them, just to stop enabling them. The last step was the most satisfying. I removed myself from the business account entirely. No more emergency access, no more backup funding, no more safety net. Rowan's marketing firm would sink or swim on its own merit. My phone buzzed with the usual family group chat activity. Rowan. Venue confirmed for Christmas. This is going to be amazing, Alara. Caterer wants 50% deposit by Friday. Rowan, no problem. I'll cover it, and Damon can reimburse Alara. He's so reliable, Rowan. The most reliable. I turned off my phone and poured myself a glass of wine. In 5 days, they would discover just how unreliable I could be. The next few days unfolded with an almost surreal normalcy. My phone continued buzzing with family group chat updates about Christmas preparations, each message a small monument to their complete obliviousness about what was coming. Alara. Picked up Mara's dress today. She looks like a Princess Rowan. Upgraded the bar package. Go big or go home, right? Alara. Dad's going to love seeing how perfect everything turned out. Rowan. Even if he's not technically welcome. Alara. Rowan. That's not funny, Rowan. Come on. It's hilarious. He's probably still carrying that fortune around. They weren't wrong about that last part. The fortune slip had become a talisman of sorts, a reminder of the moment I'd finally seen clearly, but their casual cruelty, their assumption that I would continue funding their entertainment while they mocked my exclusion, crystallized everything I'd been feeling into sharp, cold certainty. On December 13th, I received a call from Iris, my ex-wife. We'd maintained a cordial relationship since our divorce 8 years ago, built on mutual respect and shared concern for Alara. Iris had always been more perceptive about family dynamics than I was. Damon, I need to ask you something, she said without preamble. Are you really not invited to Christmas? Where did you hear that? Alara mentioned it when she called yesterday. She seemed, defensive about it. Said you were taking a step back this year? I almost laughed. Is that what she's calling it? What would you call it? I told her about the fortune cookie, about the laughter, about the group chat messages that followed. Iris listened without interrupting, but I could hear her sharp intake of breath when I described Rowan's continued jokes about my exclusion. That's unconscionable, she said finally. You've supported them for years. I have. And now you're not? Now I'm not. There was a long pause. Iris knew me well enough to understand that when I made a decision like this, it wasn't impulsive or emotional. It was calculated and irreversible. Good, she said quietly. It's about time. December 14th brought the first sign of trouble, though they didn't recognize it yet. Rowan called me directly for the first time in months, his voice carrying an edge of panic he was trying to mask with casual confidence. Hey, Damon, quick question. The business account seems to be having some kind of technical issue. The payroll transfer didn't go through yesterday, and I've got employees asking questions. What kind of technical issue? I don't know, something about insufficient funds? Which is impossible because you just made the monthly deposit last week. I hadn't made any deposit in 4 days, but I didn't correct him. Have you called the bank? Yeah, they're saying the account balance is what it shows, but that can't be right. Could you maybe check on your end? See if there's a delayed transfer or something? I'll look into it, I said and hung up. I didn't look into anything. That evening, my phone buzzed with increasingly frantic messages in the group chat. Rowan, having some banking issues? Christmas payment might be delayed a day or two? Ilara, what kind of issues? Rowan, technical stuff. Nothing serious. Ilara, should we call Dad? Rowan, already did. He's checking on it. Ilara, he always fixes everything. Rowan, always. I turned off my phone and went to bed early. December 15th arrived gray and cold, with the kind of bitter wind that cuts through even the heaviest coat. I spent the morning in my home office, organizing files and watching the clock. Somewhere across town, Rowan was probably discovering that his business account was not just temporarily low, it was genuinely, catastrophically empty. At 2 p.m., my phone started ringing. Rowan's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 2:15. Voicemail. 2:30. Voicemail. The fourth call came from Ilara at 3:45. Dad, we need to talk, she said when I answered. Her voice was tight with controlled panic. There's some kind of problem with Rowan's business account, and the Christmas venue is demanding payment today, or they're canceling our reservation. What kind of problem? I don't know exactly. Rowan's at the bank now, but they're saying there's no money in the account. Which is crazy, right? You just made the deposit. Did I? There was a pause. Didn't you? You always make the deposit on the 10th. Do I? Dad, this isn't funny. We need the venue payment today, and Rowan's account is frozen or something. Can you just transfer the money directly to the venue? How much do they need? $3,200 for the venue, plus $18 for the caterer. So $5,000 total. $5,000 for a party I wasn't invited to attend. I'll think about it, I said. Think about it? Dad, this is Christmas, for Mara. I understand what it is. So you'll handle it? I'll think about it. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside my window, the winter afternoon was fading into early darkness. Somewhere in the city, my family was discovering that their financial foundation had quietly, completely disappeared. The collapse had begun. The pounding on my front door started at 8:30 p.m. on December 20th. I was in my study reading by the fireplace when the sharp, urgent knocking shattered the evening quiet. Through the window, I could see Ilara's car in my driveway, engine still running, headlights cutting through the December darkness. I took my time answering. Ilara stood on my doorstep looking like a woman who hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her coat was buttoned wrong. Behind her, I could see Rowan sitting in the passenger seat of the car, his phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing frantically. Dad, we need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. Of course. Would you like some coffee? I don't want coffee. The words exploded out of her, sharp with desperation. I want to know what's happening. Everything is falling apart, and I don't understand why. I gestured toward the living room. Sit down. Tell me what's wrong. She perched on the edge of the sofa, like a bird ready to take flight. Christmas is canceled. The venue canceled our reservation when we couldn't pay. The caterer is threatening to sue us. Rowan's business is... God, Dad, his business is gone. Gone? 3 employees quit this week when their paychecks bounced. 2 clients canceled their contracts. The landlord is demanding back rent. She looked up at me with eyes that were bright with unshed tears, and I don't understand any of it. Everything was fine last week. I sat down across from her, my movements deliberate and calm. What did Rowan say happened? He keeps talking about banking errors and technical problems, but Dad, I'm not stupid. There's no money. There's been no money for weeks, apparently. The business account, our emergency fund, even our regular checking account is overdrawn. That does sound serious. Serious? She stared at me. Dad, we might lose the house. Rowan's talking about bankruptcy. How is this possible? I reached into my wallet and pulled out the folded fortune cookie slip. I'd carried it every day since that dinner, a small reminder of the moment everything changed. I smoothed it out on the coffee table between us. You're not welcome at Christmas, I read aloud. Ilara's face went pale. Dad, that was just what, a joke? I kept my voice level, conversational. Everyone certainly thought it was funny. It didn't mean anything. Mara just wrote down things she'd heard. Things she'd heard where? Ilara's mouth opened and closed without sound. We both knew the answer to that question. Let me ask you something, I continued. When was the last time you invited me to dinner? Not asked me to pay for dinner or sent me a bill for dinner. Actually invited me to join you for a meal? She was quiet for a long moment. We always assumed you were busy. When was the last time you asked if I was busy? Another silence. When was the last time anyone in this family treated me like a person instead of a bank account? That's not fair, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Ilara, I've given you and Rowan over $300,000 in the past 3 years. 300,000? Do you know how much of that you've paid back? She shook her head. None. Not $1. Do you know how many times you've asked what I might want in return? What I might need? How I might be doing? We know you're doing fine. You're successful. You have money. I had money, past tense. The words hung in the air between us. Ilara's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and finally, the dawning horror of understanding. What are you saying? I'm saying that as of December 15th, I stopped paying for your life. All of it. The business supplements, the mortgage help, the emergency funds, the Christmas celebrations I'm not welcome to attend. All of it. You can't just stop. I can, and I have. But we need that money. Rowan's business depends on it. Our house payments, Mara's school. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before telling me I wasn't welcome at Christmas. Ilara stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. This is insane. You're destroying our lives over a fortune cookie? I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply no longer funding it. What about Mara? She's your granddaughter. Are you really going to punish a 7-year-old because your feelings got hurt? The question was designed to make me feel guilty, to trigger the same protective instinct that had led me to open my wallet so many times before. But I'd spent the past week thinking about Mara, and I'd reached a conclusion that surprised even me. What kind of lesson am I teaching Mara by showing her that family members exist to be used? That you can treat someone terribly as long as they're paying your bills? I looked directly at Ilara. What kind of grandfather would I be if I taught her that money can buy tolerance for cruelty? We don't treat you terribly, don't you? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my life, my health, my happiness? When was the last time you included me in a family decision instead of just sending me the bill? Ilara sank back onto the sofa, her anger deflating into something that looked like genuine despair. So what happens now? Now you and Rowan figure out how to live within your means. You find a way to make his business profitable without my subsidies, or you find different work. You learn to budget for your actual income instead of my contributions. And if we can't, then you'll face the same consequences that every other family faces when they spend more than they earn. Dad, please. Her voice was small now, stripped of its earlier defiance. I know we've taken you for granted. I know we haven't been grateful enough. But we can change. We can do better. Can you? Because 3 days ago, Rowan was still making jokes about my exclusion from Christmas. In the family group chat. Even after his business started collapsing. Even after the venue canceled. He was still laughing about how I wasn't welcome. Ilara's face crumpled. She'd seen those messages too. I've spent 3 years being generous, I said quietly. And generosity without boundaries becomes enabling. Enabling without gratitude becomes exploitation. I won't be exploited by my own family anymore. So this is it? You're just cutting us off completely? I'm cutting off the money. The relationship is up to you. I stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. When you're ready to treat me like your father instead of your ATM, you know where to find me. Elara walked to the door slowly, like a woman in a dream. At the threshold, she turned back. What should I tell Mara about Christmas? Tell her the truth. That Christmas isn't about expensive venues and catered meals. It's about family spending time together. If you want to have Christmas with me, you're welcome at my house. But you'll need to actually invite me this time. She walked to the car without another word. Through my window, I watched her and Rowan have what appeared to be a heated conversation before they drove away. I closed the door, returned to my study, and picked up my book. Outside, the winter wind rattled the windows, but inside everything was finally perfectly quiet. On the coffee table, the fortune cookie slip lay unfolded, its message no longer a source of pain, but a reminder of the moment I'd stopped accepting unacceptable treatment. The bill had come due, and for the first time in years, I wasn't the one paying it. 3 days later, on December 23rd, my phone rang. Elara's name appeared on the screen, but when I answered, it was Mara's small voice I heard. Grandpa, Mommy says to ask if you want to come have Christmas dinner at our house. Just us. No fancy stuff. I smiled, looking out at the snow that had begun falling that morning. I'd like that very much, sweetheart. What can I bring? Just yourself, she said. Mommy says that's all we really wanted anyway. For the first time in years, that felt like the truth.